The palace of the alien empire stood like a giant shadow over the city below. Its tall spires touched the skies, made of shining stone and silver towers that glowed softly under the alien sun. Inside those walls, life was full of wealth and power. Nobles walked with fine clothes, soldiers guarded the gates with strict eyes, and servants rushed about, carrying food and treasures for the rulers. Yet in the highest tower of the palace, far from the joy and noise of the royal court, there lived a girl who was not free. Her name was Illyra. She was the daughter of the alien empress, born into a life that should have been full of respect and honor. Yet instead of being celebrated as a princess, she was feared. She was not free to walk the palace halls or stand before the people. She was kept in chains, locked away from the world as if she were a danger to all who came near. The room where Illyra stayed was wide, with tall windows that opened to the endless sky, but she could not step outside. Heavy chains of glowing silver bound her wrists and ankles, holding her to the wall. The chains were not only metal but also powered by strange alien energy, designed to suppress her strength. She could walk a little inside her room, but she could never escape. Day after day, she sat by the window, watching the clouds drift and the stars shine at night, wishing she could feel the wind without a chain pulling her back. Illyra's hair was long and dark, falling in waves over her shoulders. Her eyes, however, were not like those of her people. They carried a faint shimmer, a glow that frightened even the bravest guards. It was said she was born with powers her people could not control. When she was a child, her touch made lights flicker, and her voice carried echoes that shook the air. Once, during a moment of fear, she made the palace walls tremble as if an earthquake had struck. That was when her mother, the Empress, decided her daughter was too dangerous to walk free. The Empress was a ruler of strength and order. To her people, she was a symbol of control and wisdom. But with her daughter, she was filled with fear. She ordered the chains to be placed, and she told the court that Illyra was cursed. The people believed her, and soon everyone whispered that the princess was a danger to the empire. No one spoke of her with kindness. Some did not even believe she was alive, thinking she had been hidden away forever. Illyra, however, lived with quiet sadness. She was not cruel, and she did not want to harm anyone. She remembered the day she was chained, the fear in her mother's eyes as if she were not her daughter but a threat. That memory stayed with her, heavier than the chains themselves. The guards who stood outside her chamber did not speak to her. Servants only entered quickly to leave food, never looking her in the eye. Her meals were small, sometimes just enough to keep her alive. She often felt hunger biting at her stomach, but she endured it with patience. She told herself that one day, perhaps, she would be free. She dreamed of walking through the gardens she could see from her tower window, touching the grass with her bare feet, and feeling the sun without chains weighing her down. Far away from the palace, in the busy markets near the edge of the city, a human mercenary named Mark moved among traders and travelers. Humans were rare in this part of space, but not unknown. Mark was tall, strong, and carried himself with the air of someone who had seen many worlds. He worked for coins, sometimes guarding caravans, sometimes transporting goods, and sometimes taking dangerous jobs no one else wanted. To most, he was just another wanderer. Yet Mark was curious by nature. He listened to stories and paid attention to whispers others ignored. One evening, while sharing a meal with traders, he overheard a strange tale. A merchant spoke of the Empress's daughter, hidden in a high tower, chained because of her dangerous nature. Most laughed at the story, calling it a tale to scare children. But something in the merchant's voice made Mark pause. The story felt too detailed to be just a lie. Mark asked questions, but the merchant only shrugged and said, "The Empress keeps secrets. Some say the girl is cursed. Some say she has powers no one can control. But if she truly exists, she has never been seen outside her tower." That night, Mark lay awake, thinking of the hidden princess. He did not believe in curses. He had seen too much across the galaxy to trust rumors easily. To him, the thought of a girl chained away because of fear did not sound like justice. It sounded like cruelty. He decided that when the chance came, he would see the truth for himself. Back in the tower, Illyra sat with her knees pulled close to her chest, gazing out at the night sky. The stars were bright, and the moons of her world glowed softly. She wondered if freedom was only a dream or if somewhere out there was someone who might see her not as a monster but as a person. Her chains rattled as she shifted, the sound echoing in the empty chamber. She closed her eyes and whispered softly to herself, "I am not a danger. I am not a curse." Her voice was lonely, but it carried hope, small and fragile, like a flame trying to survive in the dark. Outside the palace walls, the city slept. The guards stood watch, the nobles dreamed in their golden chambers, and the empress sat upon her throne with a heart heavy with both fear and pride. None of them knew that a human mercenary was about to step into their world. None of them knew that a chain bound for years would soon begin to loosen, not by force, but by something far simpler and far stronger: kindness. The next morning in the alien city began like any other. Merchants set up their stalls in the market square, selling spices, metals, tools, and rare goods brought from distant worlds. Children ran through the streets laughing, and the air was filled with the sounds of voices bargaining and carts rolling over stone roads. Above all of this, the palace rose high, watching over everything like a mountain of silver and stone. Mark, the human mercenary, walked through the market with steady steps. He had been hired by a group of traders to guard their supplies during their stay in the city. It was simple work, but it gave him time to listen and observe. As he passed a food stall, he smelled fresh bread and roasted meat. He bought some bread, chewing slowly as he looked toward the palace. The story of the chained princess stayed in his mind, and the image of her sitting alone in a high tower would not leave him. That evening, when his duties were light, he decided to follow his curiosity. He moved through the quieter streets that led closer to the palace walls. The guards were many, their armor shining under the lanterns. Mark did not act suspiciously, but he walked as if he belonged, blending in with travelers and workers heading home. Step by step, he got nearer to the palace grounds until he reached a side path hidden by trees. From there, he could see the high towers against the sky. His eyes followed the tallest tower, the one people whispered about. He noticed how few lights shone from its windows compared to the rest of the palace. It looked lonely, almost abandoned. Something about it pulled him closer. He moved with care, staying in the shadows, his training as a mercenary keeping him silent. Soon, he stood under the walls of the tower, hidden by the branches of tall alien trees. At one of the windows above, he saw movement. A figure sat close to the bars, looking out at the night sky. Mark squinted, and his breath caught when he saw that it was indeed a girl. Her hair fell over her shoulders, and her arms were thin, almost fragile. Even from a distance, he could see the heavy chains glinting in the moonlight. So the story was true. The Empress's daughter was real, and she was imprisoned here. Illyra sat by the window, her stomach aching with hunger. The food she had been given earlier was little, just a small piece of bread and a cup of water. She ate slowly, but it was never enough. Now, as the night grew colder, she hugged her knees and looked at the stars, trying to distract herself from the emptiness inside. Mark's heart tightened as he watched her. She looked less like a dangerous being and more like a girl forgotten by the world. Without thinking too long, he reached into his pack and pulled out the extra bread he had bought earlier in the market. He hesitated only for a moment, then picked up a small stone and tossed it gently toward the window. The stone made a soft sound as it struck the edge of the window frame. Illyra turned her head sharply, her chains rattling as she moved. At first, her eyes widened with alarm. She saw a figure in the shadows below, partly hidden by trees. She thought it might be another guard, but then she noticed the shape was different. His stance, his clothes, even the way he stood told her he was not from the palace. Mark held up the piece of bread, lifting it slowly so she could see. He did not speak at first, not wanting to draw the attention of the guards nearby. Instead, he pointed to the bread and then to her, as if asking if she wanted it. Illyra stared at him in silence, her heart beating quickly. She had not been shown kindness in so long that she could hardly believe what she was seeing. Carefully, she nodded, her chains clinking as she moved closer to the window. Mark glanced around to be sure no one was watching. Then he tossed the bread upward. It struck the edge of the window, and Illyra stretched her hand through the bars, catching it before it could fall. She held it tightly, staring at it with wide eyes. The smell of fresh bread reached her nose, and for a moment, she thought she might cry. She looked down again. The stranger was still there, watching her with calm eyes. His face was partly in shadow, but she could see he was human. A human mercenary, far from his own world, yet here he was, offering her food without fear. Slowly, Illyra brought the bread to her lips. She took a small bite, and the taste filled her mouth. It was simple, but it felt like the most precious meal she had ever eaten. She whispered softly, her voice barely reaching him through the air, "Thank you." Mark nodded once, a faint smile touching his lips. He raised a finger to his lips in a sign of silence, then gestured that he would return. Illyra nodded back, holding the bread close as if it were treasure. For the first time in years, she felt warmth in her chest. Not from the food alone, but from the act itself. Someone had seen her not as a curse, not as a prisoner, but as a person who was hungry and alone. When the guards made their rounds, Mark slipped back into the shadows, moving quietly through the trees until he was far from the palace. His mind replayed the image of the girl's eyes when she caught the bread. They were not filled with danger or cruelty, but with pain and longing. He knew then that the stories about her being a monster were lies or half-truths at best. That night, as Illyra lay on her hard bed, she felt the chain tug at her wrist, but for once, it did not feel as heavy. She held the memory of the human in her mind, the stranger who gave her food without asking anything in return. It was a small act, but to her, it meant more than freedom itself. Mark, too, lay awake under the roof of a cheap inn in the city. The whispers of the market now had a face, a name, and a truth. He could not forget the look of gratitude in her eyes. He knew he would return, no matter the risk, because something deep inside told him that this meeting was only the beginning of a story far greater than he had planned. The next day, the palace city was busy again. Traders argued over prices in the market, soldiers trained in the courtyards, and nobles gathered to gossip in their halls. Yet inside the high tower, Illyra sat alone as always, her chains heavy on her wrists and ankles. The piece of bread from the night before was gone, but the memory of it remained. More than the taste, she remembered the kindness of the human who gave it to her. She had whispered thanks, and he had nodded before disappearing into the shadows. All morning, she wondered if he would return. Perhaps it had been a one-time act. Perhaps he had only felt pity and would never come back. Yet deep inside, a spark of hope grew stronger with every passing hour. Mark, meanwhile, could not stop thinking about her. He worked with the traders during the day, but his thoughts were far away, fixed on the tower and the girl he had seen behind its bars. He had seen suffering in many places across the galaxy, but never had it struck him so deeply. She was not a monster. She was just a girl who had been left alone too long. He knew the risk, but he also knew he had to return. That evening, when the sky darkened and the moons rose, Mark slipped away again. He followed the same quiet path to the trees near the palace wall. His steps were careful, his eyes sharp for guards, but his heart was steady. When he reached the tower, he looked up, and there she was. Illyra sat by the window again, waiting, her eyes searching the shadows. When she saw him, her face lit with surprise, and for the first time in years, she smiled. Mark lifted a small package wrapped in cloth. He had bought fruit and bread from the market. He tied the cloth to a long piece of rope he carried and swung it upward. It caught on the window ledge, and Illyra reached out, pulling it inside. Her chains rattled as she untied the cloth, revealing the food. She gasped softly, her eyes wide with delight. "You came back," she whispered, her voice trembling with both joy and disbelief. Mark nodded. He kept his voice low so the guards would not hear. "You were hungry. I brought more." Illyra touched the fruit with her thin fingers, almost as if she feared it would vanish. She looked down at him again. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." Mark hesitated for a moment, then answered simply, "Because no one should be left hungry. No one should be left alone." Her chest tightened at his words. For so long, she had been seen only as a threat. Now here was a stranger, a human from another world, who saw her as something else. She felt her eyes sting with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. She bit into the fruit, the sweet taste filling her mouth. For the first time in years, she felt joy in eating. She wanted to speak more, but the words came slowly, rusty from disuse. Still, she forced herself to ask, "What is your name?" "Mark," he answered, keeping his eyes on her. "And you?" "Illyra," she whispered. The name tasted strange on her tongue, for she had not spoken it aloud in so long. Mark repeated it softly. "Illyra. A strong name." Her lips curved into a small smile. No one had said her name with kindness in years. It felt new, almost healing. From that night onward, Mark returned whenever he could. Some evenings he brought food, other times just water or a small blanket to keep her warm. But more important than the gifts were the words they shared. At first, Illyra spoke carefully, shy and unsure, but soon she began to open her heart. She told him about her childhood, about the day her powers frightened the palace, and about how her mother, the Empress, had ordered the chains. She admitted her loneliness, her longing for freedom, and her fear that she would never be seen as more than a danger. Mark listened without judgment. His eyes never showed fear, only understanding. When she finished speaking, he said, "You are not dangerous to me. I do not see a monster. I see someone who was locked away for being different. That is not fair." Illyra's hands trembled slightly as she held the chains. "But my powers, they scare people. Even I do not understand them fully." "Then learn to control them," Mark said calmly. "You are stronger than you know. And chains are not the answer. Kindness and trust are." His words sank deep into her heart. No one had ever spoken to her like that. For the first time, she began to believe that perhaps she was not cursed after all. Their secret meetings became a rhythm. When Mark appeared, Illyra felt the chains grow lighter. They talked about many things. Mark told her stories of the galaxy, of the worlds he had seen, the deserts with two suns, the oceans of ice, the floating cities among the clouds. Illyra listened with wide eyes, living those adventures through his words. In return, she shared her dreams of walking freely in the gardens, touching the grass, and feeling the sun without iron pulling her back. One night, as they spoke, a guard's footsteps came closer. Illyra's heart raced, and she whispered, "You must go. If they see you, they will punish you." Mark gave her a steady look. "Do not worry. I will be careful. I promise I will come back." Then he vanished into the shadows just before the guard turned the corner. Illyra pressed the fruit he had given her to her chest, whispering his name under her breath. She felt stronger now, not because her chains had loosened, but because her heart was no longer empty. In the days that followed, whispers began to spread among the guards. Some said they saw movement near the tower, others claimed the princess seemed less weak than before. The empress herself grew suspicious, though she said nothing yet. But in the high tower, none of that mattered to Illyra. She had found someone who cared, someone who looked past fear. Mark, too, felt the change within himself. He had always been a wanderer, never staying long in one place, never letting anyone close. Yet with Illyra, he felt a bond forming, something rare and real. It was not just pity. It was trust. And trust was stronger than chains. As another night fell and Illyra looked out her window, she no longer whispered only to the stars. She whispered to Mark, even when he was not there, because she knew he would return. For the first time in years, she no longer felt alone. The alien empress sat on her throne in the great hall, her eyes sharp as she listened to reports from her advisors. The palace was always full of talk, from politics to trade, from rumors of unrest to whispers of strange movements in the city. But that week, one particular report reached her ears that made her sit straighter. "Your Majesty," said one of the guards with a bow, "the princess seems different these past nights. She eats more than before, though her meals have not changed. She also appears less weak. It is as if she has found new strength." The empress frowned. "Explain." The guard hesitated. "Some of the men on night duty claim they have seen shadows moving near her tower. We do not know if it is intruders, or perhaps only tricks of the moonlight, but there is talk that someone may be reaching her." The empress's fingers tightened on the arm of her throne. The thought of anyone interfering with her daughter filled her with both anger and unease. She had ordered Illyra to be chained for the safety of the empire. If someone was helping her, it could mean danger not only for the palace but for the entire world. "Double the guards," she commanded. "And I will see for myself." That night, the empress left her throne and climbed the long stairs to the high tower where her daughter was kept. Her cloak trailed behind her as she entered the chamber. The guards at the door bowed and stepped aside. Inside, Illyra sat by the window, her chains rattling softly as she turned her head. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw her mother, but she did not speak. The empress studied her carefully. She expected to see weakness, a fragile figure drained of spirit. Instead, she saw a quiet strength in her daughter's face, something she had not seen before. "You look different," the empress said in a cold voice. "What has changed?" Illyra lowered her eyes. "Nothing has changed, mother. I am the same as I have always been." The empress stepped closer, her gaze sharp. She saw crumbs on the floor near the bed, crumbs of bread not from the palace kitchens. She picked one up and held it between her fingers. "This is not the food I send you." "Where did it come from?" Illyra froze. She knew she should lie, but her heart pounded. To betray Mark's secret felt like betraying the only kindness she had ever known. I I do not know," she whispered, her voice soft. "Perhaps a servant left it?" The empress narrowed her eyes. She could tell her daughter was hiding something. She stood tall and spoke firmly. "If anyone dares to break the law of this palace, they will be punished. Do not think kindness will save them." With that, she turned and left, her cloak sweeping across the floor. But as she walked down the tower stairs, her thoughts were troubled. Who would risk approaching the chained princess? Why? And how had Illyra begun to change? Meanwhile, Mark returned the next evening, careful as always. When Illyra saw him, her heart filled with relief, but also with fear. She leaned close to the bars and whispered quickly, "You must be careful. My mother suspects. She came last night. She knows something is different." Mark's expression grew serious. "Did you tell her?" "No," Illyra said firmly, shaking her head. "I could never. But she is watching now. You must not be seen." Mark studied her worried face, then gave a small nod. Then we will be more careful. I will not leave you. Not now. He handed her a small bag with food inside, lowering it on the rope. Illyra caught it and clutched it to her chest. For a moment, she simply looked at him, her eyes soft. You risk so much, she whispered. If they find you, they will not spare you. Mark gave a quiet smile. I have faced danger before. But I have never met someone like you. You are worth the risk. Her cheeks warmed at his words. For years she had been told she was a curse, but in his eyes, she was something more. That thought gave her courage. The next few nights, the Empress tested her suspicions. She placed extra guards near the tower, hiding them in the shadows. She gave orders to watch for movement, to listen for strange sounds. Twice, Mark almost got caught, but his training and sharp senses kept him safe. He moved like a shadow, quick and silent, slipping away before the guards turned their heads. Illyra's heart pounded each time she saw him risk so much. Yet the more the Empress tried to keep them apart, the stronger Illyra's trust in Mark grew. One night, as they whispered through the bars, Illyra said, I used to think no one would ever see me as more than a prisoner. But you look at me as if I am free already. Why? Mark leaned closer, his voice steady. Because chains cannot hide who you are. They only hide what others are too afraid to see. You are not a monster. You are a person who deserves to be heard. Tears welled in Illyra's eyes, but she held them back. She had cried alone too many times before. Now, she did not want to cry from sorrow but from the strange new feeling that grew inside her, hope mixed with trust. Down below, hidden in the shadows of the garden, the Empress herself stood watching one night. She had ordered her soldiers to stay back while she observed. She saw the shadow of the human near the tower, saw her daughter's eyes light up with life as she spoke to him. The Empress's chest tightened. She had expected to see danger, perhaps a plot, perhaps an intruder trying to use her daughter. Instead, she saw something else. She saw her daughter smile. She had not seen Illyra smile in years. Still, her face grew stern. To her mind, kindness from a human was not enough reason to release her daughter. Humans were known for being bold, reckless, and unpredictable. Yet this one had gained her daughter's trust. That made him dangerous in a different way. The Empress turned away from the sight and walked back into the palace halls, her thoughts storming. She would not act yet. She needed to see more. She needed to test the human herself. Illyra, unaware of her mother's watchful eyes, whispered to Mark as the night grew late. You give me strength, more than you know. Promise me you will not stop coming. Mark looked at her firmly. I promise. The night was calm on the old station. Only the soft hum of engines and the quiet drip of water from broken pipes filled the air. Inside the small storage room, the young alien woman sat on the floor. Her silver hair fell across her face, and her eyes glowed faintly under the dim lights. She looked tired but also calmer than she had been before. The chains on her wrists were heavy, but for the first time, she did not fight against them. Across from her, the human mercenary sat with his back against the wall. His name was Mark. He had shared his food with her again, giving her the last of his bread. He watched her eat slowly, her movements delicate, as though she was still unsure if it was safe to accept his kindness. You are not like the others, she said finally. Her voice was low, soft, but clear. Mark looked at her. Others, he asked. The ones who kept me locked, she replied. They only feared me. They wanted me weak, hungry, chained. You gave me food. Mark nodded. Maybe because I don't see you as a weapon. You're just someone who looks hungry. That's enough reason to help. Her golden eyes studied him for a long moment. Something inside them shifted. It was not the cold glare of anger or the empty look of someone trapped. It was softer, warmer, something almost human. She leaned back against the wall, letting out a long breath. My mother, the Empress, believed I was dangerous. She feared I would bring ruin to our empire. She chained me so I could not rise against her. But in truth, I was only angry because I was treated like a shadow, not like a daughter. Mark stayed silent, listening carefully. He could tell she had not spoken these words to anyone before. When you gave me food, she continued, you showed me more respect than my own kind ever did. Mark scratched his beard and smiled a little. Well, maybe your mother forgot one thing. People aren't only dangerous when they're strong. They're dangerous when they're starved of kindness. The words seemed to strike her deeply. She looked away, blinking, as though hiding the emotions building inside her. For a while, silence filled the room. The hum of the station seemed louder. Then, without warning, the young woman pulled at her chains. This time, instead of fighting wildly, she focused. Her body glowed faintly as a strange energy flowed through her veins. The metal links began to crack. Mark stood up quickly. Wait, what are you doing? Her eyes flashed. I am tired of being chained. If you are not afraid, then I will show you who I really am. The last link shattered with a sharp sound. The chains fell to the floor like dead snakes. She stood tall, stretching her arms as though breathing freedom for the first time in years. Her presence filled the room, strong and radiant, yet not hostile. Mark reached for his weapon out of instinct, but then stopped. She did not attack. Instead, she closed her eyes and whispered, I feel lighter. Free. For the first time, I am not just the Empress's prisoner. Her golden eyes opened again, and she looked at Mark with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. You gave me food. You treated me like more than a threat. That is why I trust you now. Mark let out a long breath. He had seen powerful beings before, but none like her. She was dangerous, yes, but also broken in a way he understood. He knew what it was like to be treated as less than human, just another soldier to be used and discarded. Maybe that was why he felt no fear now, only respect. All right, Mark said, crossing his arms. You're free now. But what will you do next? If your people find out, they'll come after you. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Then let them come. I am not afraid anymore. Not when I finally know I am more than chains. At that moment, the alarm light suddenly flickered on. A loud siren echoed through the station. Mark cursed under his breath. Looks like someone found out already. The young woman tilted her head, calm even with the sound of danger. Do not worry. They will not take me again. Mark grabbed his gear and prepared to move. For the first time, he realized he was no longer protecting her. Now, it felt like she might be protecting him. As they stepped out into the corridor, the air was filled with the sound of boots and shouts. The soldiers were coming. The young woman lifted her hand, and a wave of energy pulsed out, shorting the lights and making the walls tremble. The soldiers froze in fear, some dropping their weapons. She turned to Mark. You see, I was never truly dangerous because of my power. I was dangerous because I was denied freedom. But now, with you beside me, I will not fight alone. Not anymore. Mark gave a small nod. Then let's get out of here. Together. And so, the mercenary and the daughter of the Empress walked forward side by side. Chains no longer held her, but something new connected them. It was not fear, not control, but something far stronger: trust. For the first time in her life, she was free. And for the first time in his, Mark felt like his path was no longer just survival. Together, they were heading into something greater than either of them had ever known. The chains were broken, but the story of what came after was only just beginning. The palace was unusually quiet that morning. The Empress sat alone in her private chambers, staring out at the city below. Her mind was filled with thoughts of her daughter, Illyra, and the human mercenary, Mark. She had watched from the shadows, and what she saw puzzled her. The girl she had locked away for years seemed calmer, stronger, and happier. And the human who had given her food and kindness had earned her trust. The Empress's fingers drummed against the arm of her throne. She did not like this change. She had always controlled everything in her empire, yet here was someone who had influenced her daughter in ways she could not control. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she needed to test the human. She needed to know if he could truly handle the dangerous powers of her daughter. Later that day, a message was sent to Mark. It was written in the formal style of the Empress herself. "Come to the palace," it read. "Your presence is requested. Do not refuse." Mark read the note carefully. He had expected the Empress might notice his visits eventually. Now, it seemed, she wanted to see him in person. He packed his gear and approached the palace, knowing that this meeting could decide the fate of Illyra. Inside the palace, the Empress awaited him in a large hall. Her posture was perfect, her gaze steady and commanding. She was more beautiful and intimidating in person than anyone could imagine. Mark bowed lightly. "You sent for me, Your Majesty." "Yes," she replied, her voice firm but calm. "You have been helping my daughter. Tell me why. Why do you risk your life for someone you barely know?" Mark looked her in the eyes. "Because she is human enough to deserve kindness, and she deserves freedom. That is enough reason." The Empress's lips pressed together. She did not expect such a simple answer. She had planned to intimidate him, to see fear in his eyes, but instead she saw calm and honesty. She was intrigued, though she would never show it. "You will be tested," she said finally. "Illyra is dangerous. Her powers can destroy this palace if uncontrolled. Tonight, I will summon her and see if you can handle her. If you fail, she will remain chained forever." Mark did not flinch. "I understand," he said. "I will do my best." Night came, and the palace was alive with silent tension. Guards lined the halls, waiting for instructions. In the high tower, Illyra sat quietly, unaware that a test awaited her. She had come to trust Mark completely, feeling safer when he was near. Now, she sensed the change in the air, the feeling of the Empress watching more closely than ever before. When Mark arrived at the tower, he whispered to her, "Tonight, they will watch us. You must remain calm. I will be with you the whole time." Illyra nodded, her eyes steady. "I trust you," she said simply. "No matter what happens." Mark held out his hand, and she took it. Together, they moved to the center of her room. The chains were gone, but the Empress's presence hung over them like a shadow. From the balcony above, the Empress watched silently as the human and her daughter stood side by side. She gave the signal, and Illyra's power began to stir. The room shook gently as an invisible force radiated from her, the air shimmering with energy. Objects around them moved slightly, lifted by her strength. The human did not panic. Instead, he stayed calm, standing firm beside her. "Illyra," he said softly, his voice steady, "breathe. Focus on me. Your power is strong, but you are in control." The young woman's eyes met his. The trust in his gaze calmed her. She closed her eyes, concentrating on his voice. Slowly, the energy around her began to stabilize. The walls stopped trembling, and the objects fell gently back to the ground. The Empress's eyes narrowed. She had expected chaos, fear, and destruction. Instead, she saw a human standing beside her daughter, guiding her with words and calm presence. She had never imagined that trust could be more powerful than fear. Mark continued. "You are safe. I am here. You can control it." Illyra opened her eyes again, and the glow in them softened. The energy that had threatened to break everything now felt like a gentle warmth. She smiled faintly at Mark. I am okay," she whispered. The Empress lowered her gaze. She had seen enough. The human had passed her test. He had not flinched, he had not panicked, and he had helped Illyra control her powers. For the first time, she considered that perhaps this human was not a threat. Perhaps he was exactly what her daughter needed. Mark bowed slightly toward the Empress. "I only did what was right. I did not want to harm anyone, and I did not want her to suffer." The Empress studied him. "You have courage," she said finally. "But courage alone is not enough. You must also be wise and careful. If you fail her, or if she fails you, the consequences will be great." "I understand," Mark replied. "And I will not fail her. I promise." The Empress did not answer immediately. She turned and left the balcony silently, her mind full of thoughts. She realized that she had been wrong to keep her daughter chained. Fear had guided her for too long. Perhaps kindness and trust were stronger than control and punishment. After the Empress left, Mark and Illyra stood together in the quiet tower. She held his hand, feeling safe and strong. "You did not let me fall," she said. "You believed in me even when my own mother feared me." "I will always believe in you," he said simply. "No one else matters right now, only that you are safe and free." Illyra smiled. It was a small smile, but it held hope, trust, and the courage that had been hidden for so long. She realized that with Mark by her side, she could face anything, even the Empress herself, if needed. And so, the test was complete. The Empress had watched, judged, and learned something new. The human mercenary was not only brave but wise, and he had earned the trust of the one person she had thought impossible to control. From that night on, the bond between Mark and Illyra became stronger than ever. They knew that challenges would come, and that the Empress's eyes would always watch. But for now, they had each other, and trust had proven more powerful than chains, fear, or doubt. The morning sun rose over the alien city, casting golden light on the palace spires. The world outside was busy, full of life and movement, but inside the high tower, everything felt still and peaceful. Illyra stood at the window, her hands free from chains for the first time in years. She stretched her arms toward the sunlight, feeling warmth on her skin and air on her face. The world felt wide and open, not like the walls she had been trapped in for so long. Mark stepped quietly into the room. He carried no weapons, only a small bag of food and water. His eyes scanned the room and rested on Illyra. "Good morning," he said softly. Illyra turned and smiled. "Good morning," she replied. Her smile was brighter than any light she had ever seen in the palace. She walked over to him, her movements smooth and confident. "You stayed by my side last night," she said. "Even when danger could have come." Mark shrugged lightly. "I promised I would not leave." "I meant it." For a moment, they stood in silence, just looking at each other. No words were needed. After years of isolation, Illyra had finally found someone she could trust completely. And Mark had found someone worth protecting, someone whose strength and courage inspired him in ways he had never known. That day, the Empress sent for both of them. Illyra felt her stomach tighten at first. She had faced her mother before, but now she stood tall, calm, and free. She was no longer a frightened child. She was her own person, with powers she could control and a human by her side who had proven his loyalty. In the great hall, the Empress awaited them. Her face was stern, but there was something softer in her eyes, a recognition of change. She studied her daughter carefully. "You have grown," she said finally. "And the human, he has proven himself capable of keeping you safe." Illyra nodded. "I am no longer a prisoner, mother." I am ready to take responsibility for myself. The Empress's eyes softened. It is not only your power you must control, but your heart as well. The human has earned your trust, and trust is more powerful than chains. Remember this. Mark stepped forward slightly. I will always protect her. I will not fail her, and I will not let anyone harm her. The Empress studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke. Very well. You have my blessing, in a way. The chains are gone, and the princess is free. But you must both understand the responsibilities of your actions. Freedom is not only a gift, it is a duty. Illyra bowed slightly. I understand, mother. And I will not waste this gift. That night, Mark and Illyra returned to her tower. They looked out over the city together, feeling the quiet strength of freedom for the first time. The chains were gone, the fear was gone, and the Empress's judgment had been tempered by understanding. They were ready to face the future together. Illyra turned to Mark. I never thought someone could see me as I am. Not a threat, not a prisoner, but a person. You have shown me that. I trust you completely. Mark smiled gently. And I will never break that trust. We are partners now, in everything. You and I, together. For the first time in her life, Illyra felt truly equal to someone. Not weak, not chained, not alone. She felt strong, supported, and free. She held Mark's hand, and he held hers. The touch was simple, yet full of meaning. It symbolized a bond that no chain, no fear, and no command could ever undo. The days that followed were filled with quiet adventures. Mark guided Illyra through the palace gardens, teaching her about the city beyond her tower. She discovered the markets, the streets, and the life she had been denied for so long. She learned to move among the people without fear, using her powers carefully and with control. And always, Mark was by her side, encouraging her, helping her, sharing her laughter and small victories. The Empress watched from a distance. She noticed how Illyra's confidence grew each day, and how Mark's presence strengthened her. The chains had been removed, but more importantly, trust had replaced fear. The Empress realized that she had been wrong to isolate her daughter. Power without guidance can be dangerous, but power guided by love and trust can achieve great things. One evening, as the twin moons of their world rose high in the sky, Mark and Illyra stood together on the balcony of her tower. The city below sparkled with lights and life. Illyra looked at him, her eyes filled with warmth. I never thought freedom could feel like this. I feel alive. Mark took her hands in his. You are alive, Illyra. You always were. Now the world will see you as I see you. Strong, kind, and free. She leaned slightly against him, feeling the safety and comfort of his presence. Thank you for believing in me, she whispered. And thank you for trusting me, he replied. From that day on, they were inseparable. The human and the alien princess, different in every way yet united in trust and respect, explored the galaxy together. Illyra's powers became a gift, not a curse, because she had learned to control them. Mark became not only her protector but her partner, her equal, and her closest friend. The Empress, though still watchful, began to smile when she saw her daughter walking freely among the people, laughing, and living fully. She had learned that love and trust could achieve what chains and fear never could. And so, the story ended with freedom, courage, and a bond stronger than any chain. The princess was no longer a prisoner, and the human had shown that kindness and bravery could change even the fate of an empire. Together, they faced the future, ready for any challenge, but confident in the knowledge that they would always have each other. For Illyra, Mark, and even the Empress, life had changed forever. The chains were gone, fear had been replaced with trust, and the galaxy was wide, bright, and waiting for them to explore it together.